Everybody, it's my very great pleasure to welcome you to Kabbalat Shabbat. And I hope you've all had a good week. And firstly, it's really great to see Linda back after her sojourn on the cruise ship. And also, we wish Lee, Joy and Lenny a refuah shalema. Hope you're feeling better soon. Well, it's been a very hectic week in Kenton. So on Sunday, we had the snack talk given by Brody from the Wiener Library. And then on Tuesday, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Black's daughter Honey Shopper to Ari Davila. And on Wednesday at lunchtime, I went to the food bank in the Mall. And yesterday we had a ladies' guild outing to Audley End, which is in Saffron Walden, and this was organised by Priscilla Dale and highly successful and very enjoyable. And now it's my very great pleasure to welcome back cousin Robert Brody, who's going to Dublin. But before that, we have great pleasure in hearing Morris, our technical director, who's going to give a Devar Torah.
Good evening. Thank you. What can I say after that introduction?
Yeah.
In 1776, on the 4th of July, the colony of America liberated themselves from the mother country, England, and declared their independence. Celebrated worldwide, it is now a fixture in everybody's calendar. Barbecue time all round. 200 years later, another liberation took place. And whilst not as well publicised or marked as the American Independence Day, it is an event that has had significant impact on the world, and at the time overshadowed the USA's 200th Independence Day celebrations. This was, of course, the raid on Entebbe, originally named Operation Thunderbolt and subsequently renamed Operation Yonatan in memory of Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, the commander of the 1st Aircraft's Sayeret Matkal Rescue Unit, who had been shot and killed while helping hostages return to their aircraft. At least five soldiers were wounded during the operation. The operation liberated all 106 Israeli and Jewish hostages, as well as the Air France crew who had decided to stay with the hostages since they considered they're responsible for them. Sadly, one hostage, Dora Bloch, was murdered whilst in hospital in Kampala, and her whereabouts was unknown until 1979. Her remains were recovered near a sugar plantation 20 miles east of Kampala, and 3 hostages were killed during the raid. Their bodies, however, were repatriated. What do these two events have in common? They're both about liberation. In the first instance, from a perceived draconian regime and tax rules imposed by the United Kingdom, thank you, George III, and the second from terrorists. In this instance, the terrorists were demanding the release of comrades. There is a Mishnah that states, captives may not be ransomed for more than their value. 106 prisoners were being held, and 40 terrorists were being asked for. This surely is less than the value of the prisoners. However, there is a wider view to be taken, and that is the responsibility for the entire nation of Israel, not necessarily just the individual. The welfare of the community must be weighed against the welfare of the captives. Rav Ovadiah Yosef, Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, in 1976, published an article, Operation Entebbe in Halakha. In it, besides the discussion about redeeming prisoners, Rav Ovadiah discusses another question at great length. That is one allowed to put his life in danger in order to save others? This question has 2 separate components. The first is whether the release of terrorists, which will put other lives in danger, is allowed. The second asks whether soldiers are permitted to put their lives in imminent danger to save others. Normally, a soldier may endanger his life in war. However, in this case, how can one justify putting the lives of soldiers and hostages in danger when an alternative, peaceful solution exists? Freeing terrorists may endanger lives, but fighting terrorists is without doubt putting lives in harm's way. Regarding the operation itself, there is a discussion about its halakhic legitimacy, given the special circumstances where a potential alternative solution was to pay the ransom to free prisoners. In 1976, the 4th of July was a Sunday. Entebbe is 2,205 miles from Ben Gurion, with a flight time of approximately 5.5 hours. The rescuers landed at Entebbe at 2300 hours Israeli Standard Time, midnight local time, that is Saturday night, meaning they took off at approximately 1730 hours, still daylight in Israel. Shabbat was out at approximately 2030. Many of the 100 members of the IDF task force were observant Jews. There is a halakhic question to do with fighting a war on Shabbat. Even though the actual operation took place on Motzei Shabbat, the preparations and the flight to Entebbe occurred on Shabbat. By Shabbat afternoon, the IDF gave the order for the planes to make their way to Sharm el-Sheikh airfield. Under the circumstances, was the IDF allowed to violate Shabbat? Regarding this question, Rav Ovadiah discusses the heta, a halakhic allowance to fight on Shabbat. He mentions the Gemara that discusses fighting bandits on Shabbat. The Gemara differentiates between the purpose of the enemies attacking the city. If their aim is to steal money and property, then it's forbidden to violate Shabbat. However, if their goal is to kill Jews, then one must violate Shabbat and fight. Furthermore, if the city under attack is near the nation's border, Shabbat may be violated despite the absence of an immediate threat to life. The reason for this is that the conquest of border cities may ultimately result in loss of lives. The Rambam rules that all Jews who are capable of doing so are obliged to help their fellow Jews in the besieged city. Rav Yisraeli Itzalan, a 15th century halakhic authority, rules that one may fight on Shabbat even if the ultimate motive of the enemy is to seize property, because these attacks tend to turn quickly into acts of murder. Rav Ovadiah argues that besides the danger to the hostages, seizure of the airline is considered an act of war. Were the hijackers allowed to succeed, it is quite possible that their initial success would have spurred them to further acts of aggression with more loss of life. Therefore, concludes Rav Ovadiah, the war efforts fighting and rescuing may be done even on Shabbat. Rav Yisrael explains that the legitimacy of war is based on the concept of Kiddush Hashem. Laws of Kiddush Hashem have a special place in halakhic hierarchy, overriding even the laws of Patuach Nefesh. His argument is that fighting a war, which is obligatory, does not need to be based on calculations regarding human life. The alternative in this case is to give in to the demands of the terrorists, even if it would be saving lives, would be an act of surrender and would bring disgrace and humiliation on the nation of Israel, which ultimately is a Chul Hashem, a desecration of Hashem's name. Therefore, the IDF's surprise attack on Ugandan soil was an act of Kiddush Hashem and was the correct course of action under the circumstances. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Maurice, for your exceptional Devar Torah and Shekoah to you.
Thank you.
Now, it's a great pleasure to introduce cousin Robert Brody.
Right, I'm unmuted.
You're not, Robert. Robert, you're not unmuted.
Right, am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's start with Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh al varachaman b'shoch avdecha eretz zonecha yarutz avdecha kemo ayal yishtachave mul hadarech yerav lo yedidotecha מנופת צוף וכל טעם, הדור נא הזיף העולם, נפשי חולה תאוותך, אנא אל נרפה נעלה, בהרות לה נועם זיווך, אז תתחזק ותתרפא, והייתה לה שמחת עולם, ותיק אמונה רחמך, וחוסנה על בין אהובך, כי זה כמה נחשפתי, לראות בתפארת עוזך, אלך חמדה ליבי, חוסנה ואל תתעלם, יגאלנה ופרוס חביבי עלי, את סוכת שלומך, תאיר ארץ מכבודך, נגילה ונשמחה בה, מהר אהוב כי במועד, וחננו כי ימי עולם. La 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 לכל נרננה לאדוני, נריע לצור ישנו. לקדמה פנה בסוד דוד בנרות נראה לו, כי אל גדול אדוני מלך גדול על כל אלוהים, אשר בידו מחקרי ארץ לטרפו תורים לו, אשר לא הים והוא עשהו, ויבשת עתיו יצרו, בואו נשתחווה ונכרע לברכה לפני אדוני אלוהינו, כי הוא אלוהינו ואנחנו מנסור בצאן ידו, היום עם קולו תשמעו, אל תקשו לבבכם כמריבה כי יום מסע במדבר, אשר ניסוני אבותיכם בכונני כמרוף עלי, 40 שנה כוד בדור, ויאמר עם טועה לבבהם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי ואפי, אם יבואו מנוחתי. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, ספרו בגויים כבודו, כל העמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים, כי כל אלוהי העמים אלילים, ואדוני שמיים מעשר, הוד והדר לפניו, עוז ותפארת במקדשו, הבו לאדוני משפחות עמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, שאו מנחה, ובאו לחצרותיו, היי היי היי, ישתחו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ, אמרו בגויים, אדוני מלך, אף תיכון תבל בעל תימות, ידין עמים במישרים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, Yiram hayam lo yalo sadai v'chol asher bo az yaranenu kol hatziyar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek ve'amim be'emunato Adonai malach tagel haaretz izmuchim rabim anon rofel tzivav tzedek mishpam nochon kiso Ishtefanav telechus lahitzev tzarav Heir v'rakavti v'ratav tachel haaretz Harim kadonag minamasum lifnei Adonai min lifnei Adon kol haaretz Higidu hashamayim v'tzidko v'rochramim kavodo Yevoshu kol v'pesal mitzalim balilim ishtachav lo kol Elohim Shama v'tesmach Zion v'tagerna v'notu hudel man mishotech Adonai Ki atanu elyon kol haaretz miyon nalisa kol Elohim Ohave sinura Shomer nafshot chasidav, miyad rishayim yatzileim, or zaru la tzadik ul yishrei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho. Mizmor shilot nashir chadash, ki niflaot asa hoshei Elohim minazo kodsho, hodi Adonai shuato leneko yim gilat tzidkaso zecha chasto v'eminuto levet Yisrael, Ro kol haaretz et Yeshuat Eloheinu. Hari Adonai kol haaretz pitzchu v'ranu zameru. Zamru l'Adonai b'chinor v'kol zimra. B'chatzot tzorot v'kol shofar. Hari ulifnei hamelech Adonai. Yiram hayam umroot tevel v'yoshveva. Naharot shimcha uchaf yachad harim yaranenu. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, ve'amim b'meisharim. Adonai malach yirgus hamim yoshir krovim tzonot haaretz, Adonai v'tzion karov v'ram hu hakol hamim. Yodu shimcha gadol v'nora kadosh v'oz melech mishpat ahit ata konant meisharim. Mishpat v'tzedakah b'Yakov ata asita. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu yishachvu l'Adonai rav kadoshu. Moshe v'Aaron b'kohanav u'Shmuel v'korei shemo. Korim el Adonai v'hu yaneim. V'amu danan yidaber alehem. Shamru edutav v'chok natan lamo. Adonai Eloheinu ata nitam. El nosei yitar hakem v'nokem halalilotam. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu yishachvu l'kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Mizmor leDavid. Havu l'Adonai b'nei elim, havu l'Adonai kavod v'auz, havu l'Adonai kavod shemo ishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod erim Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai b'hadar, kol Adonai shover arazim vayishaber Adonai et arazei halevanon, vayarkidem kemo egel levanon v'sirion kemo ven re'emim. Kol Adonai kosev lahavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholeh layalot, vayechesof yeharot, uvehechalo kulo merkavod, Adonai lamabol yashav, vayishev Adonai melech l'olam, Adonai oz li'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Now, as Rachel said, it's been a very busy week for the community and for the rabbi, who has added another tier of Sephardic custom to his family environment. So for Lecha Dodi, I want to play a recording of a piece composed by Aaron Ben Susan, a very... Let's find one of the... Oh, good, Linda can join me. How nice. I'm just going through the Siddur. Yes. Ya Ribbon Olam ve'almaya Antu Malkam Melech Machaya Melech Machaya Ovad Gevurtech V'timchaya Shapir Kedamach להחוויה, יא ריבון עולם ועלמיה, ועלמיה, אנטו מלכה מלך מלכיה, מלך מלכיה. שבחי נסדר צפרא ורמשה, צפרא ורמשה, לך קדישה דברה כל נפשה, דברה כל נפשה. עירין קדישין ופני נשה, חבת ברא ואופש שמיה. יא ריבון עולם ועלמיה, ועלמיה, אנטו מלכה מלך מלכיה, מלך מלכיה. Skip the last verse. למקדשך טוב ולקודש הקודשים ולקודש הקודשים, אתה דיבי יחדון רוחין ונפשין, רוחין ונפשין. ויזמרון שירין, שירין ורחשין, בירושלים קרתה. Dishifraya, 2, 3, 4. Ya Ribbon Olam ve'almaya, ve'almaya, Antu Malka Melech Machaya, Melech Machaya. יגדל אלוקים חי, וישתבח, נמצא ויהנית אל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אחד ואין לו דמות הגוף, ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו. הנו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא, נביא ומביט את תמונתו. תורת האמת נתן לעמואל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו. לא יכל לפעל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו. צופה ויודע ששערינו מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו. גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רק רישתו. ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפתות לך כקץ ישועתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו. Shalom to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Be well and happy. Well, healthy, happy.
Excellent.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you so much.